And welcome everybody again to this evening's Satsang. And as we do traditionally, we take a reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'd like to begin this evening with that reading. And I've chosen one from chapter 3. Prajapati brought mankind, this is number 10. Stanza 10. Prajapati brought mankind into manifestation, and in so doing gave man the potential for self-offering into a higher awareness through yajna. Along with this gift, he enjoined mankind, whatever you desire, seek it by offering back to the source of all energy. Let this sacrifice be your milk cow of fulfillment. Then he goes on, with this offering, commune with the devas, that they may commune also with you. Through such mutual communion, you will arrive at the highest good. By communion with the devas, you will receive from them fulfillments you desire. He who enjoys the gifts of the gods without returning due offering to them, verily is a thief. Spiritually minded people, offering up the food they eat to its source in divine energy, incur no sin. Those who make no such offering are verily feeding on sin. Now that's a very good reading. And obviously they're all good readings, but it's very enlightening reading, because this is what's being said here is a spiritual principle that's at the basis of our spiritual life, of how we conduct ourselves, how we bring our spirituality into day-to-day activity. In other words, what's being said here is the taking of prasad, as we do after arati, is what we're doing. It symbolizes the receiving of God's grace, and it's symbolizing life itself, the receiving of God's grace that comes from sacrifice, that comes from self-offering. But in order to, if we receive that grace or that offering without offering ourselves in return or something in return, it's simply taking. It's sinful. You could say it's downward flowing energy toward darkness. But to receive something and not offer is being bad. But that offering is, we're not talking about a sacrifice just outwardly. We're talking about an inner sacrifice, an inner self-offering, which is the higher form of yajna. It's not just that outward offering of rice or ghee or whatever it might be, the light, is but a symbol of that inner offering that we need to make in everything we do. And so we practice it outwardly in outer form. We practice it in doing prayer before starting an activity, before eating a meal, before doing some occasion. We bless it with an offering of ourselves, a fire ceremony perhaps, which symbolizes our self-offering, and then all that comes, you could say, has been blessed and purified. But also, not only is it inward, it also, we make offering in everything we do with our time, our effort, our energy, our will, our work. All of these are, in a sense, they're an offering of ourselves, and the blessing, which you might say purify that which comes as a reward or as a gift afterwards. And I wanted to begin with a story of about 10 years ago in Pune. I had a problem with my shoulder, and I had to go to the hospital, have a procedure done, little operation done. And I went up to Aditya Birla Hospital up in Chinchwad, and they did it. I think they actually did it in the morning, and I went home in the afternoon. But they had to put me under anesthetic, and they did this, whatever they did. And I had to go, actually immediately after I came out of surgery, or after that operation room, they wheeled me off to physical therapy and they made me start exercising that shoulder. And I had to go back 3 times a week, which I did, but it was painful. It was the physical therapist would, he began moving my shoulder and all sorts of operations. And there was a nurse there assisting him. And she could tell by my facial expression that it was uncomfortable. I was just grimacing, you could say, as the physical therapist put me through the motions of getting my shoulder back into shape. And she said something that has stuck with me and epitomized, you could say, a little bit of what we're talking about this evening. And my given name, birth name is John. And so she would say, "Remember, Mr. John, no painting, no gaining." And I like that. It was a wonderful way to say it. No painting, no gaining. I've repeated that many times in my life since, because we do something and there's effort involved, there's time involved. And we sometimes think, why isn't life easy in everything we do? And I tell you, one of the lessons out of that was because I knew I had to go 3 times a week. I knew that if I didn't do the exercises that he assigned to me during the week, it was going to be very painful. And so I religiously did the exercises because I knew, especially before I went there, because I knew it wouldn't be so bad. And he made me, I have to say, everything went well and I gained full motion in my shoulder again. But I had to go through that physical therapy in order to make that happen. And I had to, you might say, endure. Now, ideally, I would have endured that joyfully, and I can't quite say I raised myself to that effort, but I did so gratefully. I would say that. Whatever we do, if we want results in life, we have to put out the effort. We have to put out the work. We have to put out our willpower. We have to do those things that are necessary. And there's many people that think, why can't life just be easy? Why can't it just come naturally? We're God's children. Why do we have to work so hard? Well, it's not, there's lots of reasons why, but basically, let's face it, it doesn't matter why. It's just the fact. It's just we have to do it. It's like climbing a mountain. We have to put out effort to get to the top of Mount Everest. Well, maybe you could say the spiritual path is like Mount Everest, but all of us have gone out for hikes, and we know even the smallest little mountain, which maybe we're fit to climb now, and maybe that's all we can climb, but we have to sacrifice in order to get to the top of that hill. We have to work. We have to put out effort. And I go out into, from time to time with friends, and I enjoy going out for a hike. I enjoy climbing to the top of that mountain, even though it's work. And you might ask yourself, why in the world, some people do ask this, why in the world do you go out and break a sweat and tire yourself out and go on a 10-kilometer hike? And it's hard work. Why do you do that? Because I enjoy it. I bring joy to it. Now, even though we see that the effort itself can sometimes be a little physically painful in terms of we're working the body, but we know this is good. This is good for me. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to get my body into physical shape. And we bring joy to it. Well, life is like that. So many people, they take up, exercises, or they have to do work to be successful, or job to do, and it's such a burden to them. And it becomes a heavy weight that they're carrying around. Swamiji used to tell us all the time, he says, no great work, whether it's on ourselves or outwardly, no great work is ever accomplished without tapasya, or sacrifice. But if we know that, think about all the little things we do in life. All of it is tapasya. Everything we do is that's you might say, going against our whims and fancies. It's the way Master put it. everything that's strengthening our will, everything that's raising our energy upward to some degree takes effort, takes will, and it's tapasya. You know, many people think of tapasya as mortification of ourselves, you know, the fellow standing on one leg, or, you know, monks in the old days used to self-mortify themselves. And this isn't really what tapasya is, really. Tapasya is another word in the West would say, Western tradition would penance. And Sri Yukteswar defined penance is that effort that it takes, and tapasya is this, that tapasya is that effort it takes, the strengthening of our will to keep us in the center, perfectly content in our center, in the self, rather than and being subject to the whims and fancies, the likes and dislikes that continually are pulling us out of the self. And Master used to say, he says, remain in the self. Come down from the self to go about your daily activities, to eat and converse and do your work, and then return to the self. But in the midst of all of that, even perhaps it's a higher thing, is to remain in the self in the midst of everything we do, and not be subject to the poles, and the strength that we gain to continually remain in that self. And that self is not a grim state of being. That self really is in a state of peace, in a state of joy. So this is what tapasya is, and this is what you could say the spiritual path is learning to gain the strength. And no paining, no gaining, if you want to put it that way. But I guess in the highest sense, we want to get to the point where it's not even paining, it's joyful to be able to get those gains, and to be able to see that everything that's coming to us, I do it. Yes, I remain the self because I know that this is going to be the avenue that I take in life that is going to lead to what I really want, which is God consciousness. And you have to hold those ideals of how to get there. You know, you might say we're on the plains and we want to get to the top of the mountain. That's an ideal. And we have to hold those ideals. And there's different pathways to get there. So, I'm going to go that way. I'm going to attain this in life. And I'm not just talking about spirituality, and I'm talking about goals and ideals in life that we consider to be good things. I want to make a better world. I want to, a young person growing up wants to see the world change for the better. He wants to see himself change for better. These are good ideals to have, and the spiritual path embodies that, of having ideals, freedom, soul freedom, living a life in joy. And these are outward ideals, and we have to maintain that and have that and accept the fact that it's going to do that is going to take work. But an idealist, I found this in my life, when you're working for a high purpose, is a joyful thing to do. It's going to take work, just like it's going to take work to get to the top of the hill on a nice day when you're going with your friends on a trek or on a picnic or something. You say, yes, that's part of it. And you do it. It's all joyful and part of the experience. And so I think, in a sense, it's helpful for us, and it's more fun for us to live our life according to those high ideals, but not feel like, oh my God, I gotta, it's such a burden. We're gonna have fun today. And somebody says, oh, I don't want to do it. It's gonna be so much work. I don't like to sweat, or whatever it might be. I think that sort of goes back to what Swami, he used to quote that. I don't remember who it was he was quoting. I forget, but it was some saint in Europe in the old days. He said, a sad saint is a sad saint indeed. In other words, a sad saint is not a good saint. It's not saintly at all to be sad. Or you could say that, like in the autobiography of was it Baduri Mahashai, Sleepless Saint. He says, I gave up. People. He was a wealthy man, and he gave all that pretty much up to pursue the spiritual path. And people said, oh, you've sacrificed so much, you know, and they were comparing themselves to him. And he says, what? I made no sacrifice at all. I gave up a few paltry rupees for infinite bliss in God. And you see, this is it. It is, we hold these ideals of the spiritual life and then apply ourselves. And like the lover trying to do whatever it takes to be with the beloved, doesn't regret that. It's just part of the process. And if you can live and this is advice I give to people that are coming up, you might say younger people, but you can't go wrong if you live your life according to high ideals. Maintain those high ideals. And if you can do it with a joyful heart, you'll be guided. God will open the doors for you to be able to attain your ideals. To do it without a joyful heart, to do it grudgingly or unwillingly, you've closed the door already. You've lost the battle. The ideals may be great, but if you can't do them in an attitude that's conforming with those high ideals, well, then you've lost already. See, the ends, the means, the process is, you could say, the goal right there, doing life living your life right now according to your high ideals. You're there already, almost, but you will be there soon. So I think maybe you could sum it up. He says, instead of saying, I have to do this, whatever it might be, I could even say toward that shoulder rehabilitation, I have to do this. You might, if you can change that to, I get to do this for my shoulder. I says, well, I get to do this because I know my shoulder is going to really be good shape. When I finish this, I'll be back to normal. I can't say that it rose to that occasion, or rose to that height, but nevertheless, we can take that principle into life itself. You could say it takes, what does it take? It takes willingness to do the difficult things of life joyfully. That's tapasya. To do the things that need to be done to get you going, to keep you in that state, to do what's needful joyfully, not to do what's needful grumpily. Or you could see if somebody's doing tapasya in some outward activity and they're not in joyful state, then maybe it might not have been the right thing for them. So the other next challenge, of course, is, I'd say this when I was young, when you were young, people were young, you have sort of a natural enthusiasm, joy, because life is ahead of you and you've got a lot of energy. You have those ideals. The challenge is to keep those ideals alive and fresh. And I think one of the things that you learn, I think it's a natural step of the learning process as you mature, is you have to make your ideals practical without losing them. And sacrifice is part of that, being practical, because being practical does not mean compromising or sacrificing your ideals at the altar of practicality. It doesn't mean that. It means you sacrifice, yes, but you sacrifice for your ideals. You see, you realize that everything in life is going to take sacrifice, and we have to incorporate sacrifice, not avoid sacrifice, but realize that in the sacrifice, our whole life is sacrifice. The highest, of course, for the devotee is you're sacrificing your likes and dislikes. You're sacrificing your sense of pleasure for duty at times in life. You're sacrificing the comfort for maybe doing something a little bit, taking the long road rather than the shortcut. Living a life of high values rather than being corrupt and taking the bribe. Rather than having to know you're going to have to work longer and harder in order to accomplish what you're seeking in life than just maybe taking the easy way out. If you take the easy way out, you're not going to get the full reward. As it says in the Gita, he who's unwilling to sacrifice is a thief. And if we recognize that and then say, well, embrace it in the right way, and then we find that in that very embrace, say, yes, God, whatever you ask, we find God there behind the shadows. It starts to come out of the shadows. And it's not something grim. And this is, I think, one of the things, a fault that some devotees fall into, that somehow sadhana, all of these things is something, oh, I got to do. It's a burden. And when it becomes a burden, it is a burden. A sad saint is a sad saint indeed. So it doesn't mean, and I don't mean to say that life needs to be without pleasure or pleasant. I mean, it's not wrong to seek a pleasant life. It's not wrong to seek happiness in this world that we're being created in. No, the scriptures don't say that. The scriptures say we should enjoy this life. Enjoy this life for 100 years, but enjoy it rightly. Give back that you're gaining, give back and honor the source from which all good things have come. God doesn't want to, as some people approach life, the spiritual life, it wants us to suffer and, and be tears and tearful. And it's not, I don't think, certainly wasn't Master's way. Master was a joyful person. He enjoyed the things of this world. He enjoyed God's beauty. And I think God has made these things for us to enjoy, but enjoy in the right way and realize that life is sacrifice. We have to offer. And as in the offering, we receive. And so we offer ourselves to the altar and we receive the prasad of divine grace. And this applies to an individual, and it also applies to groups of individuals, and applies to an organization. So consequently, as an Ananda Sangha, we as a group, if you participate in a group, the group has to sacrifice also, and the organizations run into tests and challenges too. And so Ananda Sangha, as part of a group, we have our challenges too. We have to do this, raise money for that, and work hard. But it's an opportunity for joyful service, you see. And Swami actually said, he said, Ananda Sangha's greatest challenge in the future will be success, because in other words, things are pleasant and you can embrace a pleasant life and lose the remembrance that we also have to sacrifice. We have to embrace the difficult things as well. And so if things become too easy, I think sometimes most gurus would say, be careful, and perhaps doesn't make it so easy. And I think this is why sometimes Divine Mother, she throws roses petals in our path to bless us, but she also throws the branches in there with some thorns in there as well. So when we're right, and we pay attention, and we get both. And so you could say that blessings that come, just in a practical sense, it's not an alleviation of the need to work hard and to strive valiantly. God seems to make sure that we don't forget that. And so I think, to sum up, I can see the time is flying here. Yeah, and make it joyful sacrifice. That's what it is. It's joyful sacrifice. Tapasya is not a grim practice. It's something, remember, it's containing ourselves and not allowing ourselves go hither and yon into whims and fancies, because it's in that containment that all that joy will bubble up. If you keep the self in the self contained, you allow that process of joy to mature and that peace begins to assert itself within us. So that is our goal. Then in that, that's our goal. Then the next step, of course, is to share that. You share that with everybody. You could say this is representative, whether this is outward sharing, the success, whatever success you enjoy in life. Let's just say it's monetary success. You enjoy, you've been successful in business. You then don't contain it, then share it then. You're going out to share, embrace other people. And this is inwardly as well. We contain it for a little while to concentrate it, work hard, and then we gain that joy and we share it outward. So if I could give, when I do give those people who are newer on the path in this lifetime, don't settle for lazy mediocrity. Don't settle for just a pleasant existence if it means that you're unwilling, if accompanying that is an unwillingness to seek excellence in your life. And I think this applies to anybody who's been in business, who's been an artist, who's been a student. If you want to rise to the top, no painting, no gaining. You have to put in the time, put in the work, but not grimly. That's the thing. How do we do these things with joy, with energy, with willingness to embrace what comes? Say, yes, I'm going to enjoy this life. I've been given a great blessing. I've been given this life. That's a supreme blessing. You could say it's a gift to have the opportunity to purify ourselves. It's a gift to have the opportunity to return that gift as offering back to the giver. And when you do that, you see that the giver blessings are multiplied 1,000-fold back to you. If you do it in the right spirit, all things will come and you'll find success. You might say, like the rain, washing away all the darkness, washing away all the impurities. Darkness can't exist where there is light. And so our job is to joyfully turn that light on. So many blessings to all of you, and